Je vais juste commencer comme ça, mais dans un mode un peu express, juste pour donner un peu le ton. Je m'appelle Christophe Villot. Et la première question est, quel est votre métier? Next person is Nicolas. Oh yeah. After people will present their job and will show their projects, we'll have a period of questions. So you will be free to ask any question you want.
Thanks. Hi, so I am Nicolas Kruchten. I would describe my job as a data viz toolmaker. So I am a little bit like Christophe in the sense of I mostly work with code, except I'm sort of like one level behind. I help build tools that other developers use to build data visualizations. So my official job title is I'm the VP of Product at Plotly. Plotly is one of the sponsors here. I hope that's not why I was invited. Maybe. So Plotly is a company that was founded in Montreal about 6 years ago. There's 30 of us, and we have a number of open source and commercial products. I'll be talking about one of them as one of the projects that I do. So what does my day job entail? I have my dream job, to be honest. I'm really very lucky to be able to do what I do. I write a little bit of code. I spend a lot of time reading. I basically get to look at all of the tools that people use out in the world to make data visualizations, to try and understand what are they good at, what are they bad at, how do they compare to the tools that Plotly makes, how can we make our tools better and more effective so that our users are able to produce the visualizations that they want to produce. So I get to do a lot of research. I get to play a lot with different data viz tools. And then I bring that back to my team in this lovely sunny office. I also am an adept of the vertical screen. Hi, Matthew. And I have a nice library of viz books that I get to draw from as well. Basically, I spend a lot of my time within the team on GitHub. I review code, I test our software, I make sure that it's well documented, I respond to user concerns, I try to understand how people are using our tools to produce the data viz that they want to produce. I think that's about all I want to say about my job. Yeah.
So you can stay here if you want. Right in the way? Yeah. No. In the way. Prochaine présentation, Nicolas.
Thanks very much. So this is a project, a pretty good example of the types of projects that I work on, but it's not my project. I'm part of a team. There's about 15 of us working on this. And it's a project called Dash. So at Plotly, we build a number of products, some commercial, some open source. And our sort of leading open source project right now is one called Dash. And its tagline, it's a little small here on the website, but it's basically to build beautiful web-based interfaces in Python, no JavaScript required. So a lot of the interesting tools that you've seen here that Matthew presented, he's building them in R, but they maybe involve some JavaScript. A lot of what Christophe does is in JavaScript in D3. It's kind of what we would consider, fairly low-level coding, trying to position polygons in a circle or something like that. It's not really what data scientists really do all day, right? Data scientists are not necessarily interested in learning JavaScript. They are working in whatever domain they're working in, and they want to use visualization as part of their tool chain, but they don't want to spend most of their time in a browser learning the sort of quirks of how to get something to render in Firefox the same way as it renders in Chrome, on a Mac, on a Linux machine. That's sort of not the day job of the data scientist. And so at Plotly, we created Dash to basically put the power of everything you can do in a web browser with interactive JavaScript data visualization, put that power in the hands of every Python developer. So we wanted to build a framework that enables Python developers to put together interactive web interfaces, sort of very data visualization heavy, that leveraged our existing Plotly.js library, which Matthew showed an example of, but without having to know anything about JavaScript and about browsers. And so this is basically the Dash platform that we've put together. And just to give you a sense of sort of what my role is here, I work on making sure that the documentation for Dash is good, is up to date, is understandable. I try to make sure that it's sort of comparable to other platforms in other languages. So there exists a similar similar package in R called R-Shiny. So Dash was initially built to be kind of the R-Shiny equivalent in Python. We like to think it's better. We're porting it to R, so we're going to build the R-Shiny in Python for R. It's called Dash R. And yeah, I mean, basically what we spend most of our time doing is trying to figure out ways to make, to insulate Python developers and scientists from the complexities of what's on the web so that they can focus on their work. So I don't have a long slideshow, but what I do have is, and if this worked, nope, it did not work. Sorry about that. Can I refresh the deck? So we recently got some really good news in our inbox. This is not something that we built at Plotly, but it's an interactive Dash application from the, it's sort of got some genetic stuff here. This is basically a scientist that downloaded Dash and built an application to support the paper that he got published in Nature. And so this is an interactive web application that can be used by bioinformaticians using our software, much like the Manhattan project. And we're just thrilled that we're able to contribute to the work that scientists all over the world are doing by letting them focus on their science and quickly put together fairly nice looking and interactive web applications so they can communicate with their scientist peers across the world. So this is the type of work that I do, that we do at Plotly, is to sort of empower scientists, data scientists, to build this kind of application so that they don't have to focus on, is this going to render correctly on a mobile device or something like that. Yeah, so basically anybody can use Dash to sort of get started, and you don't need to learn anything about D3, even though Plotly.js, which is the underlying JavaScript library here, is built on D3. We kind of hide those details from you.
Parfait. Autre question? Une question là-bas.
Okay, quick question. So I've found recently that, I guess, back-end influences front-end. And more what I mean is that data collection really influences how you can visualize and what's possible. And then what I've discovered by doing some of this stuff is that while visualizing things, you get a better understanding of how things are related, maybe how to better collect data, maybe what to do from then on in, right? So the question for you guys is, in your companies personally or in the companies that you worked for before, do you think there's a bit of a problem with how information flows back from the front end to the back end? And should I re-clarify what I'm asking?
So if I understand correctly, are you using the terms of sort of front end and back end in a sort of like fairly broad sense of sort of data collection?
In terms of data collection, and then what do you do with it?
Yeah. So I think this is something I read an article recently that talks about the etymology of the word data. And actually, apparently it comes from the Latin root, which means given. So if you think about data analysis, you think about analyzing that which is given to you. And you don't actually really think about it. It's given. You start with it and you go forward. I actually think that it's important to challenge that and to think about data as something that is taken with permission, but not but not given. And so any proper scientist will tell you that the data isn't given. You had to go out and collect it. You had to go make some mice and maybe dissect them, or run some surveys or something. And so yeah, absolutely, data analysis. It's irresponsible for it to be a one-way street. You can't just take what's given, look at it, and be like, I'm done. You have to you have to move back.
But like, if you weren't, do you think you'd be able to sell that message to somebody who's like on you for deadlines and whatever?
So I forgot the first. I didn't get the first part of your question.
The main question is like, right. If you're somebody that's doing tasks and everything, how much power in most companies do you have to then turn around and say, hey, like the data I was given is wrong. I'm not going to visualize anything. I'm going to go out and fix it. Or is it usually just do what we asked you to do?
Oh, that's
En passant, encore 10 minutes et on a terminé. Donc, on va entendre parler Nicolas et Marie. Puis après ça, quelques conseils.
Okay. So I think I'm the least educated person in the panel. formally speaking, I have just a bachelor's. I guess that's one of the things I came here to say is that you don't need to have a PhD to do data visualization. You don't even need to study programming to do data visualization. So I studied civil engineering. I was always really into programming. I was fortunate enough to have access to a computer, and my father was a software developer. So as a teenager, I learned how to program, and I really liked it. And at university, I did the occasional physics lab, and we did some data. We made some graphs. We all learned how to use Excel, a little bit of MATLAB. And I realized that I actually really just enjoyed doing that. So throughout my 4 years of university, I was constantly, I wasn't actually designing buildings. I was writing software to design buildings for me. I wasn't making blueprints. I was writing software to make the blueprints for me. And all my teachers told me that that's not how real civil engineers do their jobs. So I left civil engineering. The other thing that I did there was what was at the time called intelligent transportation systems, which also involved a lot of writing software and analyzing data. And so I made a lot of graphics there. So I realized that I like writing software. I like making charts. I then worked for a nonprofit for 4 years called Engineers Without Borders. And there I was mostly focusing on the programming, less on the civil engineering. This is sort of pre-Facebook, so I was writing what at the time was called online community software. Now there's just Facebook. And I thought it was really interesting to analyze the traffic patterns, sort of what time of day are people coming to my website. This is also before Google Analytics existed, so I was writing the software for myself. And I stumbled across some sort of the creative coding community that was making some really interesting software to sort of visualize organically how people wandered around websites. So again, I was kind of just doing my day job, writing some code, and visualizing stuff as it came across my desk, and I was really enjoying that. And I eventually got a job in a very, very different kind of company. I went to work for Bell, a company everyone loves to hate. I didn't work in customer service. I was working within the Bell Mobility is a fairly large company. They work on the cell phones. And within that, I was working on the team that handles installing and maintaining the antennas. And so we were collecting a huge amount of data, not personally identifiable data, but just like how many calls did this antenna here on top of Complexe des Jardins, start and end? How many calls were dropped? This is the big thing that everyone cares about, is sort of what is the dropped call rate? It's 0.0009% or something. We had a graph for that. So I did a lot of data visualization, but again, it was kind of like monitoring something. Before I was monitoring websites, then I was monitoring dropped call rates and data transfer rates throughout the Bell network, making lots of neat little maps, sort of like, is there a geographic pattern? Is there a temporal pattern? Do the drop call rates increase when leaves grow on the trees in the spring? This is a sort of common excuse, like, oh, drop call rates are increasing. It must be the leaves. Well, does the drop call rate go back down when the leaves come down in the fall? We did some analyses on that, so that was kind of interesting. And then I sort of left big corporate Bell Mobility and went into the startup world. And I worked at a couple different startups, Datacratic, doing machine learning, again, doing a lot of graphs, a lot of monitoring, moving from websites over to online advertising delivery platforms. So buying and selling online ads sort of thousands of times per second. We needed a lot of dashboards to sort of get the alerts to notice that we're spending too much money or our system was down, so building a lot of visual tools for that. And by this point, I was pretty sure that I really liked software and I really liked data viz, so I figured I would go work for a company that just does that. Instead of sort of making visualization a part of my day job, I wanted to make visualization my day job, so that's why I went to work for Plotly. So all this to say, I didn't study this stuff. I just did it because I liked it, and I found a way to do nothing but that. So that's my career path.
Intéressant, merci.
So my advice is don't be intimidated by things that you see. You don't need permission to do data viz. You don't need special tools. You don't need to spend any money, and you don't need a capital P, a project. Like, you don't need to wait for someone to hand you a project that says, make me a data viz, because it's actually kind of rare. Just do it. Like, just start. Just make a chart. The next time you need to give a talk or send an email or write a report or do whatever it is that you do in your day job or in your hobby, add a chart to it. If there's a number in there, like, put the number on a chart and maybe get the history of that number and show how that number evolved over time. Or, I believe the data viz is a really powerful thing, and most of the time when I'm reading a nonfiction book, I'm like, where's the chart of that? Like, don't read the number out to me. This is ridiculous. It's in a paragraph. Like, so I think that we're surrounded by opportunities for visual communication, and there's basically nothing stopping you from using it right now. The chart that you showed in Google Sheets, like, you just made that chart in Google Sheets. You went to sheets.google.com and made it, and it was great. And so anybody can do that. So my challenge to you to get started in data viz is start tomorrow. Add a chart to your next communication. And the second piece is you can mentally critique the next chart you see. Next time you see a chart, ask yourself, do I like it? Does it speak to me? Can I get anything out of this? How would I do this? Do I know how to do this? Could I make this in Google Sheets? What tool would I need? Like, kind of go through the process, and just bouncing around between these two, you're doing data viz. So you don't really need much to get started, and then you can join a community. The one thing I would say is if you join a community, don't be intimidated by what you see. Someone shows you a Circos chart, and you're like, oh, I don't know how to make that. Well, that's okay. You don't need to make a Circos chart necessarily. If you want to, you can learn, but you don't have to. So yeah, like, to me, data viz is very much just like, it's like writing. It's like someone saying, how do I get started in writing? You just grab a pen and start writing. At least that's how I see it. So.